She's big, she's sexy, and she's on a rampage. Yep, there's no stopping the attack of the 50-foot woman. Released in 1958, this classic independent B-movie explores what happens when a troubled young woman comes into contact with an alien, which results in her growing to a massive size, where she seeks revenge on her two-timing husband. Yeah, and you thought some of the marriage conflicts in the Jerry Springer show were weird. Well, check this out. Like the saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and nowhere is this more evident than in this movie. So today we're going to rise up to great heights as we explore 10 things that you didn't know about Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. So, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, hey? Well, that's one death by snoo I wouldn't mind to do. So let's check it out. Number 10, made in the wake of size-changing B-movies. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was part of a popular trend in B-movies of that time, which explored the idea of characters going on an incredible journey of changing size. It pretty much went into production thanks to the movies The Amazing Colossal Man, War of the Colossal Beast, and The Incredible Shrinking Man. However, what Attack of the 50-Foot Woman had to bring to the table was the fact that this time the character in question who changes size was a woman. In fact, the movie's original title was The Astounding Giant Woman. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman would be produced by Warner Brothers, not to be confused with Warner Brothers, a company which mainly focused on B-movies, having previously produced the Roger Corman films Swamp Women and Teenage Doll. In fact, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was financed by the company's co-founder, Bernard Woolner, and it would be released through Allied Artists, a movie company known for producing low-budget movies. Number 9. The director did not want to be connected to the movie. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was directed by Austro-Hungarian art director turned film and television director Nathan Duran. Now, during the 30s and 40s, he worked on big mainstream movie productions, working for the big studios like MGM and Universal Pictures. In 1936, he was the set designer for a Romeo and Juliet movie, and in 1942, he actually won an Oscar for Best Art Direction for the movie How Green Was My Valley, and a further nomination for The Razor's Edge in 1946. However, come the 50s, and Duran took a turn in directing sci-fi fantasy movies, including The Deadly Mantis, 20 Miles to Earth, and The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. Now, despite The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad being a financial hit, it is said that he took on directing Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and fellow B-movie The Brain of a Ruse purely to get some quick and easy cash. Yeah, there was no love for the craft put into this was purely for the money. They were probably movies he personally wouldn't have worked on otherwise, and look, he probably thought that they were below him. But, you know, the dude wanted a payday, what can you say? In fact, he was so dissatisfied with Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and the Brain from the planet Arus, he requested his name be changed in the credits in order to distance himself from those movies. A sort of way of saying, nah bro, you can't connect me with these bad films, totes wasn't my doing, where Nathan Duran was credited as Nathan Hertz. That's gotta hurts. Number 8. The Tragic Life of the 50-Foot Woman. The movie's main lead of Nancy Fowler Archer, the troubled young woman who after an alien encounter grows to a massive size, was cast with actress and model and former beauty pageant contestant Alison Hayes. Like the movie's director, she too started her career in more mainstream and respectable productions. And when I say respectable, I mean in terms of levels of mainstream high art expectations. She originally had a contract with Universal Pictures, where she was cast in a movie called Foxfire, but she ended up being released from her contract after sustaining injuries while making that movie, which resulted in broken ribs and a lawsuit. So after that short-lived fiasco, she then signed a new contract with Columbia Pictures, where over the course of the next few years, she starred in a string of movies for Columbia Pictures, several of which were successful, but she never got full recognition and was sometimes even overshadowed by her co-stars. She had a further accident when filming a movie called Gunslinger, where she broke her arm due to a horse riding accident during the shoot. However, Hayes then started working on film and television as a freelance actress, free from any contract, where she shifted to B-movies. And so she was cast in a movie called Wolf Dog and, of course, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, with Attack of the 50-Foot Woman being the first movie where she was playing the main movie lead, and it was hoped that this would lead her to bigger opportunities in the industry. This part was a big deal for her at the time. Sadly though, it didn't lead to bigger and better things. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman just didn't have the effect on her career as anticipated. Now, she continued to get acting roles in movies and TV shows, including a minor role in the Elvis movie Tickle Me, as well as modelling work. But as the 60s went on, her health had declined, where she could no longer work and was diagnosed with leukemia. And sadly, she passed away in 1977, at the much too young age of 46. And although her performance in 50-Foot Woman may not have been fully appreciated for its time, her legacy does live on, as it is now widely celebrated. Rest in peace. Number 7. The Sputnik incident influenced the script. So Attack of the 50-Foot Woman came out in the wake of the Sputnik incident, where Russia launched their Sputnik satellite, which caused panic in the West over fears of outside superior technologies. And so because of this, all the flying spacecrafts in the movie were referred to as satellites rather than UFOs or flying saucers. Yep, just mere satellites. That and the spacecraft in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman did bear a striking resemblance to Sputnik. I guess it's this idea of an unknown advanced technology that no one knows anything about suddenly showing up in local communities, reflecting the real-life paranoia of Sputnik at that time. I mean, after all, nothing like this had ever happened before. This was new territories of advanced technological distrust. The script for Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was written by writer Mark Hanna, who worked on other B-movies, including the as mentioned The Amazing Colossal Man. However, there are some claims that the spacecrafts in the movie were called satellites simply because Mark Hanna assumed that all round spherical spacecrafts were naturally called satellites. Regardless, coming out in the wake of Sputnik, I guess it was as good a time as ever to call the spaceship a satellite. Number 6. That darn ridiculously looking giant hand prop. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman had a low budget for its time, with a budget that sat somewhere between $65,000 to $89,000, which is about $720,000 to $990,000 by today's currency. Now, juxtapose that with War of the Worlds, which came out 5 years earlier, which had a budget of $2 million, which by today's currency is about $24 million. So Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was not exactly going to be able to have the same level of spectacular effects and flair as that movie. But you know what? It's a cheap B-movie of its time. It is what it is. However, nowhere does the challenging budget show up than when we see Nancy's giant hand. Look at how comical this thing looks. Props to all the other actors for at least not laughing and trying to look scared. But yeah, this beast of a prop has kind of become famous for looking unintentionally funny and really crap. The hand puppet itself was made out of foam rubber, probably to have more movement and to not look stiff. But yeah, they tried. But to be completely fair to Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, giant rubber hand props aside, I actually do think the effects, at least some of them, are actually quite impressive for their time. I guess it helps that the movie was shot in black and white. Number 5. Filmed in just mere days. No doubt due to its small budget, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was filmed at a lightning speed, like this movie was filmed in turbocharge. The filming primarily took place in Taft, California and around Los Angeles, and the shoot itself only lasted 8 days. Yeah, just 8 days of filming and then that was it. It was then called a day. The shoot and effects were so hectic, some shots of the Nancy character looking big were accomplished by just superimposing Alison Hayes' image on the sets, which, as many people have pointed out, gives the character a transparent, ghostly appearance. The advanced alien that we see in the movie was in fact wearing the costume of a medieval knight. I guess the costume was from another production and just so happened to be laying around on the set, so easy as that. That's our alien costume for the evening. It was said that after the speedy filming, the editing process was just as quick, as well as adding the movie's score, which was put together by composer Ronald Stein, who also scored other B movies, as well as movies for Roger Corman. Number 4, the movie's poster was a hit. Say what you want to say about Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and how it's a silly B movie with cheap special effects. It seems that its poster was a big deal and has become an important piece of art. So much so, it was ranked at number 8 on the 25 best movie posters ever by Premiere magazine. The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman poster even made it to the book of Empire's greatest horror movie posters. And not only does it take up a huge chunk of the book's cover, but was also used in the book's forward section. When listed within the actual book's content, Empire says, quote, "Panicked ant-like drivers flee their overturned vehicles in fear of her talon-like fingernails extending towards. She better not break a nail or they'll be in big trouble." So clearly the book was coming at this with a sense of humour. I guess it's not hard to see why the poster has had the effect that it has. It's both threatening and imposing, while also being sexy at the same time, as we see Nancy going to town on the highway and completely destroying everything in sight, while she displays an angry, unforgiving face. Plus, there's the kinky aspect of this giant, scantily clad woman roaming around the place. In fact, originally, I was actually more aware of the poster than I was the actual movie itself, with this poster becoming mainstream iconography within pop culture. So yeah, back in the day, this poster would have let people know right away that the woman on this poster may be beautiful, you still would not want to cross her, as there is nothing stopping her fury once it's unleashed. Sexy, but deadly. Also, it's been pointed out that she's a lot bigger in the poster than what we see in the actual movie. But I guess the poster's also not going to show a giant rubber hand either. Number 3, the 50-Foot Woman Unleashed. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman was released in May 1958, and it would go on to make $480,000, which by today's money is $5.3 million. So despite just being a cheap movie, and the director himself being ashamed of it, the movie did make a profit. However, at the time, the reviews were mixed to poor, with critics not being pleased with what they felt were crappy special effects and a nonsensical storyline. Nonsensical storyline, hey? I mean, the movie was called Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. What did they expect? The title alone should tell you that this isn't exactly going to be Casablanca. However, in later years is when the movie's appreciation would really take off, retrospectively, where it's become a cult movie and one that's celebrated and seen as a fun landmark of its era. And some of the movie's accolades go quite deep, as it's felt that Attack of the 50-Foot Woman has underlying themes of women's issues and social placing of the times that the movie was made in, a theory that does often get analysed. I think it also has themes that anyone can relate to, like being stuck in a relationship or a marriage that's no good, and the feelings of hurt, underappreciation, and betrayal that can come from that, especially when it involves a dishonest partner. And the movie even explores issues of alcohol abuse, and how it's just no good trying to blanket the turmoil that goes on inside. So, for its time, it was shrugged off as a cheap B-movie, but in its longevity, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman had bigger plans later down the track, where it's become an important movie that's equally theorized as it is adored. And it's also a revenge story, and who doesn't love those? Number 2, planned sequel. So due to the amount of money that Attack of the 50-Foot Woman made, there were plans to make a sequel, and the sequel plans were ambitious, in that the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman sequel was going to be bigger and better in every way. It was going to be shot in colour and have a larger budget. However, for whatever reason, the sequel just never took off and was abandoned. Jump to 1979, and Dimension Pictures were planning a remake, with Blood of Dracula director Paul Morrissey attached to it, but that also didn't go anywhere. And during the 80s, another remake attempt took place, where Sybil Danning was cast as the 50-foot woman, and even took part in a photo shoot in character. However, that production also collapsed. Despite this though, eventually, a remake would come into existence. Number 1. Legacy of the 50-Foot Woman. In 1993, HBO produced a television movie remake of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, which starred Daryl Hannah in the main role. It got positive reviews, but I don't think it was particularly groundbreaking, as it was very quickly forgotten about. Maybe it would have had more of an impact if it was released theatrically. 2 years later, in 1995, a parody was released called Attack of the 60-Foot Centerfold. And as pointed out by Wikipedia, in 2011, Roger Corman himself produced a 3D movie called Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader, which once again is a parody/homage to the original movie. Now, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman has actually been referenced in several pop songs and music videos. My favourite is the music video for a 1998 song called She Will Have Her Way by New Zealand singer-songwriter Neil Finn, as in that guy from Crowded House. It's a nice little romantic song, where the music video is set in the original Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and actually uses clips from the film, where Finn plays a singer from that movie's world, who is able to calm down the 50-foot woman in her rampage and start a loving relationship with her. Once again, it's all very cute and adorable, but it does make me wonder, how exactly does their intimate life work? Like, does it involve his entire body going into places? Okay, I'm having all sorts of weird images in my head, so I'll stop talking about it. Once again, it's all very cute, and even ends with Finn marrying her. A different turn of events indeed. Now, in recent years, there have been talks that another remake is on its way, and is to be directed by Tim Burton. And apparently there's also talks for Margot Robbie to star in the movie and produce it. So, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens, or if it even happens at all. But in the meantime, there will always be that time in 1958 when Nancy Archer decided that she wasn't going to take any more crap and unleash her fury, creating one of the most iconic B movies of its era. A movie that shows the dangers not of nuclear testing or war, but rather the unfair treatment we inflict onto others throughout our mundane lives. For this was the day that rectified that. This was the day of the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman isn't your usual man cheats on wife finds out, turns into a giant, and destroys the town kind of movie. In the 1950s, we saw all kinds of scary monsters in movies, from aliens up above to monsters in the deep down below. But I love the idea that someone said, what about an angry wife? That'll be a pretty intense and scary scenario. However though, the 50-Foot Woman isn't really the monster. She's more tragic. I always felt the true monster was the husband and the way that those around her treated her. So, there's some food for thought. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I don't like remakes. But Hollywood, I'm just gonna say this once. An Attack of the 50-Foot Woman remake starring Sydney Sweeney. Think of all the money you'll make. See ya!